Hey, what's going on, Average Joe readers? And today I want to talk about films and books. Specifically, what books should not be films. So there's all kinds of movies and especially shows now that are being adapted from books, and it's been happening for a very long time. But I think with the boom of like Game of Thrones and some other ones, that and now that there's Netflix, Hulu, and all these streaming services, everybody that's trying to make these shows are pulling them from books, which I think is fantastic in a lot of series, and a lot of things because there's so much good content out there versus rehashing some of the old stuff or just making stuff that's crap. So I was starting to think of, okay, what in books, and a lot of times when reading books, I think, okay, would this be awesome to see, on the big screen on whether it's a show or a movie? So I started thinking of books that would be good and also bad for film. And today I wanted to talk about the ones that I think should not be film. Not You should not even attempt to create these from book onto the film, because it's not much worse to book people than to try and get their hopes up on a great film adaptation and then it being terrible, and then it always being known for that, or always, well, we don't talk about that kind of thing. Now, when I say books that I do not want to see as film, I mean like filming, how you actually have to film someone, and not anime or animation, because technically, if with anime, you're not filming anything, you're producing or animating it, you're creating it. You're not actually filming anything. So I'm specifically talking about live action films. What books should not be films? Because when you go with anime, you can pretty much make whatever you want, depending on the animation. So this is purely a list on live action film. So some of the ones I want to talk about are, the first one is, I'm still reading this one. And that is the Ash and Sand series trilogy, and it is a fantastic series so far. I'm about to finish book two, and I absolutely love it. But it is dark, and I think at times Game of Thrones could be super dark with some of the stuff they did. Well, this one definitely surpasses that, and I think when you take that and try to put it on film, they're going to curb it a little bit and bring it back some. I mean, even with Game of Thrones, they pulled it back a little bit. For those of you who have read Song of Ice and Fire, and Kings of Paradise or Ash and Sand is definitely on the darker side. I think it could be done very well, but a lot of the asterisks I have on this list are, it could be done well, but I'm not confident, and I'd almost rather them not try than to just try and half-ass it, and we get just this shell of an adaptation. And then Kings of Paradise would, because of that, because of how dark it can be. I don't know if it would be all too great, but also there's some of the magic on there is a little bit mysterious, and it could be kind of confusing. I'm not sure how they would pull off that. Also, chronologically, how the series goes would be interesting. How it would be kind of complicated to see how they would do that as well. Next one is a very big one. It's probably one of the most popular series out there in the fantasy community, and that's Mistborn. I really don't think anything could adapt Mistborn besides a book. I don't think you could do a proper film on it. I don't think you could do a proper video game on it. Nothing like that. I think Mistborn would be very hard, because one of the things is, all with all the allomancy, one of the things that they see and with like the push and pull are these blue lines going out to all the metal, and I'm not sure how you would do that on the screen, because is you going to see that every time, or is it just going to be a couple of times here and there? Is it just going to be the beginning? How are you going to do that? And then even like the the soothers and such, in the books you're reading about them doing this, but visually, how are you going to tell when somebody is like manipulating somebody's mind? Is it going to look like the Force or something? Like, I don't know how they would do that properly. There's also a ton that happens in Mistborn that you would have to be make that into like a show as well. It couldn't be like a trilogy of movies, but I think that it would be really hard to pull off on this. Next one is going to come with somewhat of an asterisk, and that is Never Die and the Mortal Techniques books. So the reason why this is on here is that the books are great, but I don't think film could do it justice because there's a lot of like these legendary warriors and there's gods involved and um I think that to achieve the right aesthetic, I think the only way you could do that is with anime or animation. And anime would be super easy to do this. And I think they should do this at some point. Uh, Also, with this, is that so far each of the books have different sets of characters. So you'd have to completely recast for each season or each movie for each adaptation. So I think with anime again, it could be a lot easier because you're not really completely recasting; you're just getting the voice people. The next one, funny enough, it's already been attempted, and that's Dresden Files. If anybody has ever seen those, so it has already been attempted, and it did not go so well. I've seen about five of those episodes or so, and honestly, I think the casting was decent for Harry and Bob. Harry wasn't too bad of a cast. I think that's kind of almost how I pictured it in my mind, anyway. Of course, you could probably do better. And then Bob, I think, was almost spot on. If I were to cast the ideal Bob to me, it would probably be Tim Curry. And the guy that got to play Bob looks a lot like Tim Curry. Looks, sounds is a lot like Tim Curry. So I think those were spot on. But this was done in the early 2000s or something, and the budget was really low, it seems. And because of the low budget and cutting corners and such, I don't think they did it. Definitely didn't do it justice. But even to try to do it now with bigger budgets, with these like Netflix and people that might want to throw money at a series, I think it'd be very hard because, well, for starters, it's super long, like 17 books right now, and they're going to be about 25. So you would have to take all of that down, probably wait till more books are out for starters, take all that down. You're going to need to whittle it down to maybe max 10 seasons. And some of them you might be able to do it because each book is a standalone series, so you can almost do like one or two books per episode. You might be able to boil it down to, but I think you're still going to lose a lot of nuances. There's huge fans of this series now, so there's going to be a lot of nitpicking of what gets cut, what gets changed. And again, it's possible to do this good, but it's going to be really hard to meet expectations and to actually do this justice. Next one would be the Arc of the Scythe. I really enjoyed this series. It is technically YA, but I think it straddles the line at times because death is a major component in here. Even though everybody is essentially immortal. They've conquered death. You can be reanimated and brought back to life, but people still die. And the scythes are the reason, are the beings that every year they have to meet a quota of gleaning or killing a certain amount of people. So death is definitely a major part of it, and there's a lot of conflict. And I think it could be done really well again. But because this is a YA series, I really would not want them to make this like a kid version of it, like make it dull it down some, because then it would just be terrible. You got to have certain adult aspects to it. There is still a lot of killing. There would be a decent amount of gore if you do it right, I think, because there's a lot of action and a lot of killing, which you wouldn't see in a lot of these YA type series. And I don't think you would be able to make it a show. There's not enough content to make it a show, but to make it like a trilogy of movies, I think you could pull off. Could be decent, but I just don't see this. I see this being much younger than it actually would actually read, and it would be fairly disappointing. Now, my last one is going to kind of straddle the line. I'm not even sure how if it would be done. I might put this into the books for film, but I'm in between if Red Rising should be film or not. Now, to me, because of all the moving parts and the space element and the the size of everybody. I mean, you have golds and that are like 7 feet tall, and the obsidians are like 8 feet tall. So you're gonna need to really do some movie magic. It's gonna have to look like when they filmed like hobbits in Lord of the Rings, to where Frodo's sitting way behind and off to the side, so it looks like he's this short, but he's really just like 10 feet away from Gandalf. So I think you're gonna have to do a lot of movie magic with that. That's gonna make it a lot harder, and you're gonna have to have a huge budget for special effects as well, because there's all these sci-fi elements. So it still straddles the line, so it could be done. With the Expanse series now, there's all kinds of space and spaceships, so that's being done, and I think it's probably pretty decent start. And with technology, it'll just get better and cheaper anyway. But that's kind of an in between as well. But yeah, how you would do the size of people would also be interesting, and then keeping all of the dark elements to it. So those are the books that I think should not be filmed. This is a short list, but I'm really interested in what you think that you do not want to see adapted into a film. With all of these shows going on now and all of these networks that are making their own original series, I'm sure more and more are going to come. But I really am interested to see what books you do not want to see as film and why.